Hey, Regular Guys, welcome back to another, what we hope will be an exciting edition of the Regular Guy Show. This is part two in a two-part series on post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was just so much material, we didn't have enough time to cover it last time out. And this time we brought you a real exciting guest, in addition to our guest from the last episode, Courtney Petter, who's a licensed therapist in this matter. Not only post-traumatic stress, but she's licensed in so many other things that involve stress, anxiety, depression, anything, you name it, she can help you with it. But we thought we'd bring back a real interesting man to help you understand what it's like to go through post-traumatic stress disorder on a day-to-day basis after serving your country. As you know, and as we said last time out, it can be a cause that is post-traumatic stress, from a natural disaster to a serious accident, terrorist attack on the extreme, just sudden death of a loved one, of course, war, combat, a violent personal assault, and that 67% of people exposed to mass violence actually develop post-traumatic stress disorder. So, without any further delay, we're going to welcome Courtney Petter back to the show. Courtney, thanks for coming back again. We appreciate it. You look like you told somebody some bad news in your office. Maybe you
it's too much gardening, poison ivy.
I thought maybe a client gave you a solid left hand or something like that after you told them something they didn't want to hear. No,
not as exciting.
Well, I suppose you have insurance for that anyway. But in addition to Courtney, we have Michael Bahuniak. Mike is Chief Warrant Officer and a Senior Instructor Pilot and Instrument Examiner for the U.S. Army National Guard. Mike's going to be here and tell us a little bit about his experience. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Really nice of you to come out today. But as always, we like to get into it by asking our Bible guru, Rick Annunziata, what the Bible says and what Jesus says about any issue we're facing on this show. Now, this is post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't imagine that existed 2,000 years ago. But I know that there's always some interesting scripture that appeals to and addresses just about any problem a regular guy can face, Rick.
I don't imagine it was defined, but it certainly existed.
Yeah.
Because of the traumatic situations back in Jesus' day. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was Jesus was at an event with a lot of people. He was speaking to the marginalized, the forgotten, the outcasts of society. He told a trilogy of stories. The parable of the lost sheep, where a shepherd goes out and leaves his flock in search of the one sheep. The parable of the lost coin, where a woman searches diligently for a lost coin. And the last one was the parable of the lost son, the son that had squandered his father's inheritance, only to return not to a rebuke, but to compassion and mercy. And Jesus wants to emphasize that God knows us. He hasn't forgotten us, that we're known. And that God diligently searches for us and diligently finds us. And so one might say, I don't feel found. I mean, I feel lost. How can I find God? And we know God has already found us. The better question to ask is, how can I let myself be found? And if I was playing a child's game like tag, I would just simply stop. And I would let myself be found. So what does that mean? That means that we stop our busyness.
Yeah.
We go to church. We take a walk and talk to God. We put ourselves into a position to be found. And let's not fool ourselves. We know how to build relationships, right? We go out and shake hands. We meet people and we find commonalities. Well, it's no less different with God, because it's a personality, and that relationship can be cultivated just like any other relationship. This knowing that God speaks about is a common thread throughout Scripture. And I just thought I would read a little bit from Psalm 139 that talks about that. So Psalm 139 says, "O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar, and you discern my going out and my lying down, and you are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. If I go up to heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise in the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light will become night around me, even the darkness will not be hidden to you, Lord." So the Lord reminds us in closing that no matter where we go, no matter how dark life gets, no matter what trouble or chaos we find ourselves in, it can never be low enough and dark enough that God cannot reach us, that he knows us intimately He knows us well 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000 years before we were ever born. God knew us. And because he knows us, he loves us. And he loves us intimately despite our failures and despite our faults. And sometimes we think we're in a place that God cannot possibly reach. And that's just not true.
Exactly.
And it speaks well to anyone that's having a hard time in life, PTSD, and all manner of difficulties, that God is there, he knows you, but we need to make ourselves available to him. Let ourselves be found.
Right. It starts with be still and know that I am God,
Yes.
pausing, redirecting your time, and spending time with him quietly. And I think a lot of us think that we have to talk to God and ask him, well, this is my issue, this is my problem, what do you say about that? I think if you just sit quietly and think about it as if you were talking, but without verbalizing, even that helps a lot. But you need to spend the time, as you said, Rick, listening and waiting for the answers and trusting that they'll come. It's hard to do. It's hard for me to do.
It is.
I know it's hard to do. But trust and devote time in quiet to thinking about and talking to God. Just
It's
quiet.
relationship building, Dom.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's
Hey,
relationship building.
Like you always say, he wants a relationship with us.
That's right.
Yes, he does. Courtney, let's review it a bit. What types of situations can cause PTSD?
Okay, well, you named a
few of
lot
them.
of them. Yeah,
Right.
Terrorist attacks, military situations. But in the common realm of life, most times it's abuse, childhood abuse, women being abused, men being abused as adults too. A lot of clients I see, those are the main things that I see with PTSD.
They're more domestic issues.
Yes, domestic issues, and you do have military situations that we're going to be getting into later, much more common since more people
Sure.
are out there doing that now.
course.
But what I see a lot is, domestic situations.
And symptoms include anxiety, triggers.
Anxiety, depression, weepiness, nightmares, flashbacks, hypervigilance, so really being on edge, wondering if someone's behind you, being jumpy, noises like fireworks.
Wow. And I know we asked this question last time out on the show, but how could PTSD be different, and how could it be handled now for veterans versus as it was in the past when you're talking about the Korean conflict, World War II, Vietnam? Is there a difference in the way that it's handled these days versus back then?
There is, it's handled more seriously now. Counseling's available for people from the military when they get out of the military. Military One Source exists. It's an organization for all veterans.
Good.
And I just think the way it's handled now, it's an understood situation. So the veterans are coming back in a healthier way than they used to way back with Vietnam.
We got about 30 seconds left. Talk a little bit about Military One Source. I know we're going to be talking about it again with Mike a little bit later on, but give us an idea for the layperson what it
Military
is.
One Source, it covers 12 counseling sessions for
Yeah.
anybody who gets out of the military, and they can even get more than that if they need it. It can cover for themselves, it can cover for spouses, for families. They can come in and do counseling, all different avenues of counseling to deal with reintegration from war, from deployment, just in general, if anything else is going on with them, not even military based. There's another great thing in Massachusetts that exists too called On-Site Academy. That's not for military, but that's for people who are firemen, policemen, et cetera, that they can also go to for trauma.
Right, exactly. More mainstream occupations that
Yeah.
are. I would never call women and men in that field civilians, but they're more domestic. They're on land here. They're not
Right, who
overseas.
still experience trauma on a daily basis
and
in their
I'm
jobs.
sure that they do. We're going to wind it up on take a quick regular guy break, but come right back because we're going to be meeting Mike. He's going to tell us a little bit about what it's like to be overseas and some of the issues that he's had to face. Stay with us.
Welcome to Dorico's Meat Market, where fresh and natural ingredients are our specialty. We have the most diverse collection of fresh meats and made-to-order sandwiches that Massachusetts has to offer. Steaks, chicken, pork, homemade sausages, and fresh sliced cold cuts. Newly picked natural vegetables. We got it all. Our vast collection even comes marinated and ready to be fired up for dinner. And who could forget about Dorico's famous meat packages that will save you cash and feed your family for the entire week? There's nothing missing from our collection. What's missing from your table?
Join me on the Hank Stoltz Experience. People are always asking me, what is the experience? Well, that's the beauty of it. It's everything that has to do with Central Massachusetts. From the politics of the region to the great events that are going on each and every weekend or every night right here in Central Mass. You don't want to miss a single moment as I discuss exciting new topics with a variety of different guests on each show. The action never stops on the Hank Stoltz Experience, only on Charter TV 3.
Welcome back, regular guys. We're here with Courtney Petter, a licensed therapist, Rick Annunziata, our Bible guru, and of course, Mike Bahuniak.
Yes.
Mike, thanks very much for joining us. You have had a lot of experience overseas. You do what I used to dream about doing. And I mean, I'm glamorizing it, because there's so much bad stuff in it, but I wanted to be a military pilot. And the first question they asked me is, do you wear corrective lenses? And I said, yeah. And they said, sorry, too bad. So, I guess just was a heartbreak. But what you do is a great thing, and I want to say thank you for serving our nation.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show. Let's ask you a little bit about what it was like. How many deployments have you had, and what difficult issues would you say that you had to confront during those deployments and during your time overseas? And you were in Iraq and Kosovo mostly, right?
I was in Iraq 3 times, then Kosovo once.
Okay.
And as far as a unique situation, mostly for the soldiers, is being away from their families, being away from their loved ones, their children, and not knowing what's going on. So in 2003, we had no internet, we had no phone support initially, so it was going back to writing letters and trying to keep up with what's going on back home through written letters, and then those letters trying to keep up with you, because we were always constantly moving. Once we started the initial invasion going northbound, it was difficult for them to find us.
Tell us a little bit about that invasion going northbound.
It's initially we were attacked, or we were under attack, and the guys were constantly running into the Z Trench and putting on all their MOP 4 gear, their chemical suits, and their gas masks.
The Z Trench.
The Z Trench is a trench that we dug in the sand, and we would go to, and that's where we go for safety. If we had any type of concrete revetments, we would go in there also.
Okay.
But we had to dig the holes in the sand, and it was actually, it built up a lot of friendships throughout that. I had a good friend that we were under the 6th attack that night that we were going out into the Z Trench, and you would hear the call come over the radio, and everybody's going through and trying to put their gear on, and my buddy Mark was like, no, let him kill me. I'm all done, because he was so tired. We were up working all day, and he was just totally mentally and physically exhausted. And I would grab Mark and then get him to the trench and get everything all set. And the next day we were laughing about it. He was, we were still tired, but.
So you guys were on the move quite a bit.
Yes, we were.
I noticed in some of the pictures that you sent us that the viewers at home, the regular guys at home, are looking at periodically throughout this episode. You're with a lot of young people, a lot of kids.
Yes.
A lot of people native to that region. How did you, and when I saw those, I said, geez, I mean, they welcomed you. And sounds like it wasn't all rough and tumble.
It was just a lot of times where you didn't have a lot going on, that you were always preparing for the next move, the next mission, and you relied on each other as far as to help each other out, because if you were off on a mission and all of a sudden the unit had to move, you relied on them to move all of your gear, or if you needed somebody to talk to, you needed to go and talk to somebody.
Right.
And you would pick those people out, those people you could rely on.
That's nice, that's nice. Emotional issues from combat. Some of the things that you've had to see and endure, I'd imagine that they've had some repercussions. Are you dealing with anything that resembles post-traumatic stress disorder? Any particular, do you have to deal with some symptoms?
Well, what I saw, my wife pointed it out. After I returned, I would be a little bit more reserved. I didn't think I had PTSD. I might have some issues today, but I would be a little bit more on guard, be more aware of my situation, and like to sit where I could see everything, like in a restaurant.
With your back against the wall.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, Courtney, that's what you were talking about earlier, the hypervigilance, right?
Yep.
What about noises like 4th of July or someone at a shooting range? Does that make you jump?
No, that didn't. That doesn't affect me as far as it was just being around a lot of people, and then you're around other people that are strangers, not part of your unit. that you're working with. So as the deployment went on, we had more and more available to us as far as support.
Yeah.
So, but
So you felt more camaraderie with the unit than with
Oh,
safety,
sure.
yeah, when you were with them rather than other people when you got out.
you were all going through the
Yeah.
same experiences. Remember we were flying north back to Balad, and we were south of Baghdad, and we were flying at night under goggles. And I had a good friend of mine who was in the lead aircraft, and I was in the second aircraft, and we were engaged with a surface-to-air missile. And I watched a missile go right by my buddy's helicopter, and everything occurred in slow motion. And I said, "Oh, Mark is dead." And I thought that. And then it just went underneath his rotor system and missed him. And then they shot one at us, and it just went right outside our rotor disc. And we went through and instinctively broke and provided suppressive fire. And then we went back and we debriefed, and everybody was very happy to be alive, that they didn't have an issue. But that was something that both crews would always get together and talk about. And I think it was good that they talked about it.
I was going to ask you if that helped you guys in the wake of something like that.
Talking amongst ourselves would help out other
Yeah.
people.
No, and other
didn't
people weren't
understand.
there. They don't know.
Right.
Unbelievable. I was going to ask you what experiences you and your colleagues have had, your friends over there, your comrades, and that sounds like definitely one of them. Is there anything else that you would be comfortable pointing toward?
Well, just living on the move constantly, we were living in a very austere environment. We had no water as far as to shower with or to shave with.
Yeah.
Most of the younger guys like that because they didn't have to shave. But we would sleep in the helicopters with our crews, so you'd have a 4-man crew sleep in the back of a helicopter or outside of it in the weather, because we're always on the go. We didn't have the tents or the support to keep up with us. And we lived like that for 3 months. And again, any time that we could go as a crew or as a team and go to a base that had a mess hall or base that had a shower, we would take the time trying to go through and help each other out.
That's nice.
And it was good bonding. It's like,
You still keep in touch with some
I
of
do.
those guys?
I do.
It's so easy with social media, but hopefully you keep in touch with them personally, like really old school contact, and see each other, I hope. What about your return home? Well, back up a second. You described something called mission focus in a conversation. And during deployment, mission focus. Talk a little bit about that and how that impacts you now that you're home. Mission focus being out there doing your job as part of our military versus now that you're home. We were able to fill that void after you came home. We were able to make that that distinction between daily life here as a civilian again and what you were programmed to be like, mission focus when you were...
When we were deployed and we were on mission, we were focused on building up to the mission, executing the mission, and then that cycle repeated itself. So you're always busy, always focused on the task at hand, and you dealt with that. And so it was so intense, you didn't have to worry about putting kids to bed, going shopping, paying the bills.
Right.
All that was handled at home, and you try to go through and compartmentalize that. So, you were dealing with now what was occurring with yourselves, and try not to deal with the highs and lows off the mission.
We're going to pick that up when we come right back. This is going to be a real good conversation. Stay with us, regular guys. We'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome to Dorico's Meat Market, where fresh and natural ingredients are our specialty. We have the most diverse collection of fresh meats and made-to-order sandwiches that Massachusetts has to offer. Steaks, chicken, pork, homemade sausages and fresh sliced cold cuts, newly picked natural vegetables. We got it all. Our vast collection even comes marinated and ready to be fired up for dinner. And who could forget about Dorico's famous meat packages that will save you cash and feed your family for the entire week? There's nothing missing from our collection. What's missing from your table?
Andy was signed in 2000. Strong announcing voice, good work ethic, and we throw a live hit at him every now and again, but he and the front office know who the real franchise sports anchor is around here.
That's good. Are you sure?
I try to be a mentor to him, show him the ropes, help him develop.
Should it be this high?
But every now and then, I need to think about job security.
Academy 82. Moving on. General Tso's chicken and Szechuan orange flavored. What happened to my script?
Kid certainly has a bright future here.
Did he mention I'm also the news director?
Welcome back again, regular guys. We're here with Mike. Mike, as I mentioned before, Mike Behuniak is a wonderful veteran that served our country well, and we're talking a little bit about his experiences overseas in Iraq and Kosovo, and he's a helicopter pilot, so he knows a little bit about the dangers that exist in that realm. Mike, we were talking about mission focus during deployment and what it's like to come home after being conditioned to be mission focused. So let's pick that up again. Tell us a little bit about what the transition was like coming back from a solid task, 1, 2, 3 regimented task of being mission focused, and now coming home and just having to wing it sometimes.
Trying to get in step with your family and their lives, because now your children are a year older. They were a year without you. Your wife was dealing with all of the responsibilities for managing a home without you, making all the decisions, and here you come back in, and you don't want to be a bull in a china cabinet knocking everything over and trying to take command again, but of the family. So trying to go through and fit yourself back into the family. And where do I belong? Where's my relationship with my wife, my children, and how to restart that? Because as the children get older, they're more focused on their friends and building up relationships outside the family. But you're trying to regain that year, and a lot of people would try to gain that year back that they lost.
More aggressively, right?
More aggressively.
I'm imagining what that would be like, and I think that would drive me crazy. That would make me really. That would be really tough for me, if not impossible. I can't imagine how you're able to do it. You have to blend in, you have to kind of defer, Courtney, right? And just take up.
That's what I mostly see with couples with reintegration, yes. Figuring out where you now fit in their routine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like you said, you don't want to be the bull in the china closet,
Exactly.
but you're the husband, you're the father, you want to pick things right up. It's our instinct almost, Rick, to just say, so what's going on? Let me jump back into what you're doing.
Yeah.
You got a soccer practice, you got a basketball game, what's going on? And then maybe they have this distance, because I guess young people are facing life. 1 year to them is like 5 or 7 years to us, because so much happens in a young person's life, a teenager or a child, versus us. It's the same stuff every day for us, but for them, things change from month to month almost. That's really
When
difficult.
you were in mission focus in the field, was information that you received from home distracting, or did you kind of like filter that right out?
You were always yearning for it. You always wanted that, even though you try to put that to the side. So when they had mail call, and it was just like you saw in the movies in Korea or Vietnam, we would all gather around, and they call out your name initially or tell you that you had mail, and it was like Christmas. And you're looking for that letter, that package, and you would go through, and if your buddy didn't get anything, you opened up that box and you shared with them.
Nice.
And because you didn't want them to really get depressed about nobody wrote me, nobody, and it was just the mail trying to keep up with us, because we were always on the move.
Any specific issue with family, children, or your wife that you're comfortable talking about that was just presented to you when you got home that you really had a challenge getting around?
My daughter growing up and
Yeah.
maturing, and I always had an excellent relationship with my sons, but trying to gain that back, and it's something I could never get back. And after it was really tough for us to go through and try to connect. She became very independent and wanting to do things on her own, and refused to take any type of parent advice. And we struggled with that for many years.
Courtney, is that something that, and I want you to hit that ball too, is that something that, what do you think about that? And is that something that, daughters and fathers wrestle with versus sons and fathers? It's, for me and my son, it's almost like, yeah, no, that's it. We're right on the top line again.
It's really age-based, okay? So like when kids are young, you know, for a period of time, girls are close to the moms and it switches and close to the fathers.
Right.
And as teenagers, a lot of times they are close to the dads, they fight with the mom. So he might have been away during a crucial period of time then in her development when the father-daughter relationship was important.
Talk about mission focus on a particular film you were telling us about earlier.
There's a movie called The Hurt Locker, and it was a very detailed movie about people deployed. I believe it was Afghanistan they were in. And the end of the movie stands out to me when the man comes home to his wife, and he's home, and they're showing him just integrating, and she sends him to the store. And he goes in the cereal aisle, and they have the footage is like this, they make it look like a very long aisle, and he's in the cereal aisle, and he's standing there overwhelmed. And that stands out to me so much because so many people tell me, so many military people say, I feel overwhelmed here about small decisions I have to do daily, whereas when I'm on my mission, I know exactly what I have to do.
Exactly.
So to me, that's the crux of PTSD, in essence, you know, coming back and life's small decisions here that are no big deal to us are big to them because their mind is in such a different place than it was.
Talk about an example involving a Navy SEAL that you're acquainted with.
Years ago, I had a Navy SEAL come in. He only came in for 2 sessions, and he was a very large African-American man that you would never think would have any kind of fear at all. And he came in, and he had been a sniper in another country. He wasn't allowed to tell me many details. And one of his missions was that he had to kill an important leader. And he told me, if you don't do what they tell you, you know, you're in significant trouble, so you have to do exactly what you're ordered to do. And this leader then grabbed a child's hand that was the same age as his son. And he said inside he had such anxiety because he knew he had to kill this man, but he had to do what he was told. So he did, and the child lived. But he came in, and we were doing this technique called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is great for trauma, especially PTSD, military trauma. And he was just shaking and petrified as we were doing this, almost like reliving this. But then we completed the procedure and he ended up being okay. But that really struck me as somebody that, you know, so strong in a Navy SEAL, struggling so much internally with what he had to do there.
Yeah, well, you know what? Put yourself in their position. I don't care if you're 10 feet tall and you're a mountain of muscle. When you're in a position like that, it's kind of new to you, and the fear of the unknown and what to do and how to react, and then you see something by association, a little boy, a little girl, and that seems to be somebody that's about the same age as somebody you have at home.
Yep.
I can imagine.
Incredible conflict.
I can only imagine
Yeah.
how tough that
It's
must
awful.
be. Eye movement desensitization. We're going to ask you a little bit about, Mike, what assistance was available to you when you got back? Was it helpful? And returning from combat, are things like eye movement desensitization helpful to veterans like Mike? Courtney, what do you think?
Yes, he's not reporting much PTSD, so I can see why it wasn't really necessary for him, but definitely very helpful. And helpful also the domestic issues like I reported earlier for
Sure.
childhood abuse, adult abuse. It's very helpful.
Good. And one source, military one source?
Military one source can set people up with that.
Excellent. Mike, last words. What advice can you provide to other veterans like you that have done some of the great things that you've done?
Well, the command and the VA are there. They're your best advocates. They want to know if there's an issue, and they want to provide direction or guidance as far as to get you the assistance you need. You know, we continue to go through and ask our soldiers if they have any problems, and they actually provide embedded into the unit counselors and trying to go through and, you know, pry that out of somebody that might have some problems or issues. But the thing is to go through and to seek assistance and to talk about your experiences.
Right. Excellent. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being
Thank
on
you.
the show. Thank you very much, Rick.
Thank you.
And thank you very
Really,
much,
thank you for
Courtney.
your service.
Thank
Really
you, sir.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Very unusual to have great guys like this on the show. Thank you, everybody. We'll join you next time on The Regular Guy Show.